made it available to persons who had children who were not as orderly as they should be, or some other factor. We took children that people who had children in homes that couldn't take care of the children, then we took them into the houses, in the cottages. They seemed to work better in the cottages than they did in the homes. So I remember my mother and my daddy had a little girl, and she became so obstinate that they decided that she needed to be someplace else. So they put her in one of the cottages at Mount Arnold Head. And she ran off the first thing, and we didn't know where she was, and we found her and brought her back, and she became very glad to be at that house.
Carol, what was your first memories of having a child, Jimmy, in your home, and how long was he there?
Jimmy was only with us a few months. As Jerry stated, we lived in this community that was just development in southeast Memphis, and it was known as Parkway Village. And we attended the Night Arnold Church of Christ. And so many of the families, the young families that was moving in there, that was their dream. You know, you buy your own home, own your own home, and raise your family. That is the type of community that Parkway Village was in the late 50s, and I'll say in the early 60s. And as he stated, it was at church, there was a man and his wife there, and they were having a struggle to make everything work for them. And so one night, out of the blue, she just left him with those 5 children. It was 4 or 5. And he was continued trying to work and take care of them, but it was just more than he could. So he approached the church to ask them if he could get some help. Well, there was, everybody jumped right in, and 4 of the children were taken almost immediately. I think there was a baby. I think Jimmy may have been the oldest one. He was a little boy. And he was left, and there was no place for Jimmy to go. Well, Jerry and I had three little girls ourselves, and it was a struggle, but you know, there was nothing else for us to do but to take Jimmy. So Jimmy came to our house, and I think it was probably in the spring, you know, March or April or something of that type. And oh, he fit right into the family. I just fell in love with him immediately. And our children, Tia, Teresa, and Marcia, they had a big brother. They were so excited. And not only that, but Jerry had him a son. He followed Jerry around just like a little old puppy dog, doing yard work. And it was a great time. It was good. And it was beginning to get school time, and oh, our household was in such a buzz. Everybody was so excited. Jimmy was going to get to start to school. We got school supplies, we got clothes. We did all the things that a mother with the first child does with their child going off to school. Mm-hmm. We never got to experience that moment. As Jerry told you, there was this rap-a-tap-tap on our door one night, and there was a mother. And she had come to get the child. And we begged, we pleaded, we persuaded her. But she was going to get her child. We had no recourse. And I went to the bedroom and I got Jimmy. I walked in there, and to this day, I can feel that child's arms around my neck. His legs was locked around my back. and tears rolled down his cheeks, down my neck, as she pulled him from my arms. We haven't heard from Jimmy or any of the other children that were taken out. And the church prayed diligently that those 5 children would be taken care of. And I'm sure that they have been. I have tried to research some to find him, but, of no avail. There was no tracking. Now that's how I remember the moment. I guess the seed was planted that something had to be done, that Jerry has explained it had to be done. And the men started about doing it, and it was a long process. So that had been about 1964. So there was several years in there of finding out what had to be done. As Jerry mentioned, Haskell Clutch had worked as a social worker in Mississippi, so he had quite a bit of knowledge about the procedures and things. None of us had a clue what to do, didn't have a clue what we needed to do. But he said you needed a license. So that was a process. Started trying to get a license. It wasn't an easy road. But I remember there was, Sherry had mentioned Merle Haas. And he was a go-getter. That's the only way I know how to do it. He was a go-getter, and he was determined to make this work. And as Jerry was mentioning about the houses, at that time, so much of the child care they thought at that time that should use a cottage. That was the best way to go about it. Just place them in a cottage. And so a lot of that was being done before Agape was ever started. So the cottages were prepared. Raleigh had a bunch. East Fraser had a bunch. I'll just put it this way: the different congregations in the Memphis area really did rally to the cause of trying to take care of the children. And we came by way of knowing there was an attorney at East Fraser. He was contacted, and so there we had somebody that knew about social work. Merle was a go-getter. He was finding out about the licensing. We had an attorney that could deal with Tennessee. So things were falling together, but it didn't happen overnight. It was over a long period of time. And it was, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 years after Jimmy's departure before they went to Nashville. And they were interviewed there, or they did interview there, gathered information, came back home, went through it, pulled out what they could, and but anyway, as I said, eventually, with the help of many people who had the same interest and the same goal, was to help the children. But I would say, and then I would say that Judge Kenneth Turner was probably one of the greatest advocates that helped to get Agape going. And I know that he and Jerry were very close, because Jerry worked extremely close with him. And I guess you could say we was the first intake cottage. We lived in our little cracker box on Perkins Road in Parkway Village, and
I worked at the post office at night, and I sorted mail, and he'd call me, Judge Turner would call me when he'd get some children, and he wanted us to take them. And he said, I got 2 children for you. I want to mention these 2. I don't remember the children's names, but he said that the police had brought these children in. They had been picked up in the median of a street in Memphis. And the 2 little boys were in a room about this size, and one was on one side of the house, of the room, and the other on the other side. And they were as different as children could be. they didn't even have hair alike. One had red hair and the other had kind of a almost a white hair, and so I got those two children, took them home, and we called Carol and tell her I'm gonna bring some children home, and she said okay, bring them home, and so we brought children home like that, and then we would take and put them in the cottages in that Arnold had, and we did that for some time, and but he would always call me, and I'd go by and pick up children from the court.
There was sometimes,
So we got, we
I have to
switched.
switch cards. Yep. So give me just a second.
Terry, I've not heard that part of the story. I mean,